Hi YouTube, it's Taiwan Car and I am back with another review for Underground. This time it's Season 2, Episode 4. And before I get into the review, forgive me, I am sitting on a bar stool. And so I see that my head is kind of moving out of the frame. Okay, so before I get started, I want to shout out to two YouTube channels. These ladies also do Underground reviews, and I want to kind of just spread it out all through this season as I do the reviews myself to let you all know who else is reviewing the show. One of them, I've mentioned her before, is TW23. She supports my channel, and so I definitely want to support hers as well. And then there is a new lady. Well, she's new to me anyway. She's been YouTubing for a while. Her name is My Twisted Life with Poetry. So you can also go to that channel to get some more underground reviews. I'll try to stop shifting around so that I can keep my head in the frame. It starts off, this particular episode starts off with Daniel, who is played by Bokeem Woodbine, and now I know his name. I did look and see it on the IMDb page, but it hadn't been spoken, and so I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable saying it. But anyway, another slave comes up to him. This is a Fellow's Plantation in Kentucky, and he has something that he believes is important. And I don't know if it was because he was hearing rumblings or whatever, but Daniel reads the paper, and it's about someone named John Brown coming to town who's definitely an abolitionist, but he also has some violent ways about, going about his beliefs. And in that conversation with Daniel and the slave who brought him the paper to read, Daniel gets to express how heavy it is, the gravity of being able to read, and I guess the pressure that he's under, and how now he, has these thoughts and sees these words, and so it becomes just like a heavy weight to bear. The slave who was asking him to read the paper about John Brown, and I believe that that's the character's name. If I say anything that I might get wrong, please correct me in the comments, or if I leave anything out, add it in the comments. But it made me reflect, that we have so many of us who maybe either take reading for granted or education for granted, or, we think that whatever we learn in school is enough and don't take it upon ourselves to do more. And so that's just kind of what that made me think about. And the slave who brought him the paper is asking him, please, Daniel, will you teach me how to read? And Daniel is basically kind of telling him, like, you don't want this kind of trouble in your life. And so just thought that was interesting. Then we get to Cato, and this is a flashback scene. I believe that it was 4 months ago. I believe that this first flashback scene with Cato was in England. I don't know if it was in England. I don't know if it was necessarily London, but we see him at this art museum or art gallery with this beautiful woman, and they are both staring at a sculpture, I think, and admiring it and giving their take on it, and telling each other what they see. But anyway, we see that this woman is someone who's going to become his love interest. And I didn't keep up with all of the flashbacks with Cato with exactly where they were, but I saw that he was in various places in Europe. And I have to mention also that the beautiful woman who was remarking on the sculpture that they were commenting on I think that maybe she wanted to express gratitude to the man who saw fit to bring that sculpture there so that they could view it. And we come to find out that I think that the name on the plaque was that it was dedicated by C. Powell, and that is the name that the man that we knew as Cato is going by now. So now we're back to the sewing circle, aka Set It Off 2.0, and those ladies are preparing for a rally of some sort, definitely some kind of anti-slavery rally. and they're trying to get their speeches together, and the speaking order, apparently Elizabeth is in control or in charge of that list, and they're asking her where it is. And her head, you can just tell that she's in another headspace. She's not altogether there, but she does gather herself and finds what she's looking for. And then they are talking about this John Brown who's supposed to be coming into town, and while they agree with his stance on anti-slavery, they don't agree with the violent nature of what he does to try to achieve what he wants. They even talk about him, I guess, either inciting people to or participating in the killing of families who own slaves, like going in and just slashing them up or shooting them in the middle of the night. And so they're just saying that that's not what they're down with, even though they're down for the cause, that they're just not down with the violence. And before we flash away from that scene, we see the ladies hear a noise, I guess in one of the crawl spaces or something. I can't remember the way that they worded it, but Rosalie has thankfully made her way back to that station house. So she's safe with the sewing circle. Now we're back to Noah / Cato, because Noah wakes up in Cato's big house, and he gets himself up, takes a shower, I guess, or gets himself clean, a bath, shaves. His beard had grown very long, and what else? He puts on a suit that Cato has given him, compliments of Cato. And then we see him go downstairs, I guess, to maybe a foyer type area, and he sees Cato sparring with a boxing partner. And then we get another flashback of Cato somewhere in England, or somewhere in Europe. Like I said, I did not keep up with all these different cities that he was in Europe. And he's out with that beautiful woman that we saw at the art gallery, and they're in definitely mixed company. They might have been the only people of color there. There might have been others, but there were definitely white people there as well. And I think that maybe his woman bumped into a man and he called her an insulting name. Cato was ready to get with him right then, and the woman's like, no, it's okay. It's just words. Don't worry about it. Okay, let's go have a drink. And so she just tries to get him out of that scene. Cato says, fine, let's have a drink. He pours her a drink, and then he proceeds to take the bottle and smash it over the man's head. And then just kind of throws up some money, makes it rain, and exits the club. And so his girlfriend this woman, his love interest, she's upset because she's like, I don't need you going off, on people every time something happens. It was just words. You don't have to do all that. And then he kind of throws in her face that, you like where my money takes you and the things that we get to do. And so she snatches her earrings off, I guess, to show him, I really don't care about this stuff. And she says, I want to know you. That's what I'm interested in. And Cato gives her a look. And I think that from what we know, too, of last season, that look just kind of said, you say you want to know me, but girl, you probably don't. She might not be ready for Cato. Then we get a quick scene of Rosalie back at the station house with the sewing circle, and a doctor is looking over her. And Elizabeth is just kind of going over how extreme it was. It must have been for some man to have beat Rosalie, I guess, regardless of her being black or white, just the fact that she's a woman, and a pregnant woman at that. To beat her within an inch of her life, how savage, someone must be to do something like that. But one thing that I thought that was just kind of strange, that laudanum, now that I've learned what that is, thanks to my subscriber Misty, I think her name is Misty Davis from episode 1, we see that doctor who was treating Rosalie is also treating her with laudanum, the same stuff that her mother, Miss Ernestine, is getting high with on the other plantation in South Carolina. Then we get back to more of Cato and Noah. Cato has decided that the two of them need to be able to have a gentleman's conversation about the past, basically, and hash out their issues, I guess, with everything that happened since they left the Macon plantation. And Noah is clearly just not here for it. And Cato knows Noah well enough to see that he's trying to hatch out a plan even now. And he lets him know that he's hip to it. He's like, that knife that you have under the table, what are you planning to do? Are you going to stab me with it? And he points to several people in the establishment, basically to let them know that, these are all of my people. If you get past these two, then you're going to have to deal with the next two. If you make it to the door, then you're going to have to deal with the guys who are at the door. They all are mine, basically. And so you might want to reconsider whatever it is that you're thinking about doing. Then we get another Cato flashback to somewhere, again, in Europe. I think that he might be in Ireland this time, and it's some fight scene. And kind of repeatedly, I think, we're just seeing these scenes where it looks like he's going to get his butt beat, but then his beautiful woman, his Indian woman, inspires him, and he finishes the fight and wins the fight. Then we're back to Noah and Cato and their lovers' quarrel that they're going through. They're still working out these issues. Noah, one thing that he tells Cato that probably punched him in his gut, he asks him, you're free, why aren't you searching for your wife and your daughter, who you supposedly cared so much for? And we know that had to, hit Cato in the heart, or whatever piece of heart he has in that chest of his. And then we get another flashback to him proposing somewhere again in Europe, and he's proposing marriage to his Indian love interest. Then we get back to Noah and Cato's lovers' quarrel / blame game, because now we have Cato telling Noah that Henry and Moses, that their deaths are on his hands, on Noah's hands, because, he convinced them to leave the Macon plantation and run, and now they're dead. And one thing, though, and I think that that was another gut punch this time, 1 point for for Cato. But one thing that I was waiting to have happen, since they're hashing it out, like, let's just talk about all of it. I was waiting for Noah to bring up the fact that Zeke's death then would be on Cato's hands, because no one knows, and Noah mentioned last season that he knew that Cato did something to Zeke, and we all saw what it was, and I don't know that it will ever come out, what truly happened, but no one knew, and he mentioned it, and so I just thought that might come out in that conversation they were having, but it never did. Okay, then we have Elizabeth and this scary John Brown guy who came to town. Now, earlier he sat down with the sewing circle, and him and some of his gang or posse or whatever, and they were just talking about, their thoughts on what needed to be done to end slavery. And they all could agree that, we have the same goal in mind, but the ladies from the sewing circle just said, his methods were a little too violent for their taste, and he's just kind of on his Malcolm X by any means necessary type of thing, where they're more on their, Martin Luther King thing. And so they just had to agree to disagree on the method, but they could all agree that, yes, it does need to end. And so that slavery, being it, does need to end. And so then we see Elizabeth and John Brown and go to this, I guess, polling location, because John Brown mentioned something when they were sitting down about people just voting with their hate. And I know that that's something that that was a recurring theme of this last election cycle, that a lot of people say, people who voted for Donald Trump just voted with their hate. And so we see a lot of things come up in this show that that we are dealing with in current times. And so I like that. That's one thing that I do like about Underground. One thing among many things that I like about Underground. But so anyway, they go to this polling place. I think it's a polling location. And John Brown basically tears the place down so that people won't have that opportunity to vote with their hate in this election. Not on his watch, not while he's there. And Elizabeth asks him, what got you involved in the cause? And he goes on to tell her this very heartfelt story about this guy that he saw, this, black man that he saw getting beat, and his son saw him, and he knew that the man was starving, and I think that he saw the man like beat within an inch of his life, and he again saw him starving. His plan was to bring his lunch, which was, I think he said, a piece of bread and cheese and maybe an apple or something, and he was going to give it to the man, and or maybe the man's son. And he's like, and I went there the next day, and what I saw, nothing, because the whole story was BS. So he's telling her this BS story, and he's like, I don't need some heartfelt story to make me want to do right. He's like, it just comes down, for him, it basically just came down to right is right and wrong is wrong, and you don't need some moment in your life or some aha, moment or epiphany to make you act right and to make you do what's right. And so I think that Elizabeth might have felt kind of silly, and I think that we see that Elizabeth is falling for this guy, and I don't even know if good old John, is that his name, John, if he's even cold in his grave yet. But Elizabeth, hey, she seems to be ready to move on, maybe, you guys. What do you think? So back to this ridiculousness between Noah and Cato. Cato now is giving Noah an opportunity to redeem himself. Since we put it out on the table that, the deaths of the people, the Macon 7 people who didn't make it, Noah, they're on your hands. So if you are this good guy that you say you are, how about you put yourself back into bondage in exchange for these 7 sad souls, which they were called later in the episode. You put yourself back in bondage, and I'll, let these 7 go free. And Noah thought about it, like he might have been struggling, but he decided that no, he did not want to do that. And I don't think that it was any coincidence that there were 7 of those people standing there, because I think that perhaps the intention, either by Cato himself, or maybe just the producer's intention to put Noah in mind of the Macon 7, and here's your chance to really free 7 people. So what are you going to do? He chose to not give up himself. Then another quick flashback of Cato somewhere in Europe fighting someone and looking like he was going to lose the fight, but getting a pep talk from his woman and then coming back and winning it. Now we get to the anti-slavery rally that the Sewing Circle, aka Set It Off 2.0, had been planning all this time. And so the ladies, we see one of the ladies from the Sewing Circle giving a speech, and then Georgia, who admitted earlier that, that speaking was not her thing. She had been convinced by something that Elizabeth told her that she should go on and speak. So she gets up and she starts getting ready to speak, but then we can see that she just got a horrible case of stage fright. So she just runs off the stage. Elizabeth jumps up in her place and starts talking, and her speech at first sounds like something that was very written and very planned, but then it gets very raw and emotional, and it looks like she just makes a switch and kind of just starts talking from her heart and speaking what is truly on her mind. And one of the last things that she said, I think, was that she says, those who make peace impossible make violence inevitable. And I believe right after she said that was when some man threw a rock dead in the center of her forehead. And then from there, the whole rally just turned into a violence fest. Nobody was hearing anything. And it was odd to me that people would show up who are really not anti-slavery at all, unless they were just going there to agitate. Because I do wonder if people ever go to these rallies and you already don't feel the way of what is being presented. So are you going there hoping that your mind might be changed, or are you going there just to start something? And I just wonder, because it's almost like there's, we're here saying, let's end slavery. And then there are other people who are just like, no, let's not end slavery. And that's why we're here. So I didn't understand really their point, unless it was just to be violent, if that was the intention from the beginning. So finally, Noah